motorcycle world just got rocked, and it's Harley Davidson at the center of the wreckage. Sales have tanked, profits nosedived, and the very soul of the brand is hanging by a thread. But this collapse was driven from the inside. The twist? It wasn't a rival brand, a factory recall, or a biker rebellion. It was the CEO's own wife, a woman who never rode, never understood the roar of the engine, and never belonged in the brotherhood of chrome and thunder. So, how did someone so far from the road end up crashing the world's most legendary bike brand into the dirt? Let's break it down. Everyone points the finger at Jochen Zeitz. But what if the true force that shattered Harley Davidson wasn't even in the boardroom? What if the final blow came from someone outside the company? Someone with no ties to motorcycles, leather, or the open road? Because while Jochen was the one signing off on decisions, the culture surrounding him, the world he brought with him, may have been the real killer. And standing right beside him, Kate Garwood, his wife, a Hollywood film producer living in LA, as far removed from biker culture as it gets. Kate doesn't work at Harley. She never walked the production floor or sat in a dealer meeting. But her world, glamorous, curated, progressive, became the default setting for Harley's new direction. The moment Jochen took over in 2020, everything shifted. Not slowly, suddenly. And it wasn't just change, it was replacement. Traditions were tossed, heritage was erased, and Harley went from gritty to glossy overnight. This wasn't evolution, it was invasion. Let's talk about that. Zeitz isn't some old-school gearhead. He's a polished German executive who came up in luxury goods and sustainable fashion. He once ran Puma, not exactly the resume you expect from the leader of America's most iconic motorcycle brand. His personal life reflects that same vibe, refined, curated, image first, and Kate Garwood fits perfectly into that world. Suddenly, Harley wasn't about freedom and rebellion. It was about purpose, inclusivity, branding alignment. Dealerships turned into boutiques. ESG reports replaced engine talk. And the lifestyle being sold? It looked a lot more like something you'd see in a fashion ad than on the road through South Dakota. If Jochen's Harley became a reflection of the culture he lived in, then Kate's world absolutely mattered. He didn't just bring in a new leadership team, he brought in a new value system, and it looked nothing like the one Harley was built on. Then came Heather Malinchek. This woman didn't ride. She didn't care about the roar of an engine. She came from General Mills. That's right, the place that sells yogurt and snack bars, and somehow she was handed the reins to Harley's branding. The first thing she did? Launch a campaign that looked like it was ripped from a clothing catalog. Where were the leather jackets, the road trips, the blue-collar grit that made Harley special? Gone. She even instructed her team to avoid typical biker imagery. Let that sink in. Harley Davidson was being marketed without bikers. The very people who built the brand were erased from their own story. And that strategy tanked. Authenticity scores, yes, that's a real metric, plummeted. The campaigns didn't bring in the young urban crowd they were aimed at, and they alienated the loyal base who had stuck with Harley through decades of ups and downs. But instead of course-correcting, Zeitz doubled down. He wasn't just CEO, he was on a mission. A purpose-driven transformation, he called it. That meant chasing ESG targets, hiring management consultants from McKinsey and BCG, and pushing Harley toward electric bikes and sustainability goals. Zeitz treated Harley like a luxury brand with a conscience, but he forgot it was a motorcycle company with a soul. That wasn't just a pivot. It was betrayal, and the community felt it. Riders who had passed Harleys down for generations were now being told they were off-brand. Heritage was out, lifestyle marketing was in. And while Zeitz stood on investor calls talking about the future, the past, the very thing that gave Harley its power, was being buried. This wasn't leadership, it was identity theft. Let's talk about what happened when Harley Davidson stopped smelling like motor oil and started smelling like lavender-scented candles. Enter Larry Hund. Now, this man didn't come from the world of engines or open roads. No, Larry came straight from Tiffany & Company. Yes, the place that sells diamond rings to hedge fund babies. This was the guy Harley trusted to handle commercial operations. A man who spent 25 years selling engagement rings was now tasked with selling Harleys. You see where this is going. The moment Larry rolled in, things started to change, and not in the new paint on the gas tank kind of way. It was more like Harley had been mistaken for a luxury handbag line. Dealerships, once filled with grease-stained floors and stories passed between generations, suddenly got a makeover. And not the good kind. Gone were the gritty, lived-in shops with coffee-stained counters and couches held together by duct tape. In their place, sleek showrooms with white walls, brushed chrome, polished tile floors so shiny you could see your future disappointment in them. You weren't walking into a garage anymore, you were walking into a boutique. Some even served artisanal coffee. What rider wants oat milk and mood lighting when they're shopping for a 900-pound V-twin? But the worst part? It wasn't just the furniture that got replaced, it was the people. Subscribe to the channel if this story keeps you hooked. Let's get back to the topic. Larry had a vision, a luxury one. And in that vision, those family-owned dealerships, some of which had been selling Harleys since the 50s, just didn't fit. They were labeled legacy dealers. And you know what that means in corporate speak? Dead weight. So, one by one, those legacy dealers were squeezed out, forced to sell, forced to close, generational relationships with customers, gone. Decades of loyalty, trashed. But while Larry was redecorating the dealerships like they were Apple stores, someone else was busy trying to reinvent the motorcycle itself. Enter Ryan Morrissey, aka Mr. Electric. Now, Ryan came from Tesla. That's right, Elon Musk's empire of quiet cars and tech bros. And just like you'd expect, Ryan arrived at Harley with the mission to go green. His title? Chief Electric Officer. Sounds like a job made up in a Silicon Valley brainstorm session. Morrissey had one goal: make electric bikes the future of Harley. And in doing so, he ignored the single most important thing about motorcycles: the feel, the roar, the connection. He wanted to swap that out for silence and zero emissions. The result? The Livewire. A bike that cost over $30,000, didn't rumble, didn't smell like anything mechanical, and felt more like a laptop on wheels. But it wasn't just the product that failed, it was the attitude. Morrissey actually stood on stage during a Harley event and said traditional motorcycles were outdated, to a room full of Harley riders. That's like telling cowboys their horses are obsolete at a rodeo. While riders begged for upgrades to classics like the Road King or Fat Boy, Morrissey was pouring over $400 million into electric R&D. Meanwhile, Harley's most loyal models were left in the corner like forgotten toys. No innovation, no love, just dust. And while Indian Motorcycle was busy making powerful cruisers at better prices, Harley was building battery-powered fashion statements. But if you think that's where the pain ends, nope, because then came the quietest, deadliest hit of all. Her name? Corin. Her role? Let's just call her the corporate assassin. Corin's background wasn't in motorcycles or marketing. It was activism and consulting. Think slideshows, buzzwords, and culture change. And the culture she brought? It hit Harley like a wrecking ball. She wasn't trying to tweak the brand. She was trying to replace it. Corin introduced rigid internal DEI mandates that weren't about expanding the brand. They were about rewriting its DNA. Employees who had spent 20-plus years building Harley's identity suddenly found themselves pushed aside. And then came her boldest, most tone-deaf move: killing off two beloved heritage models, just gone. Bikes that represented decades of engineering, tradition, and pride were scrapped. And in their place, gender-inclusive city cruisers. Now, this isn't about gender, it's about identity. These new bikes were stripped of everything that made a Harley feel like a Harley. They didn't roar, they didn't connect, they didn't feel American. They felt safe, neutral, sterile, the opposite of freedom. Harley had been gutted, not by a market crash, not by foreign competition, but by people inside the house. What role did Kate Garwood, Jochen Zeitz's wife, really play in all of this? Officially? None. She's a film producer. She didn't sign the memos, she didn't run the meetings. But symbolically, her world, Hollywood minimalism, curated values, progressive branding, seeped into Harley's bloodstream the second her husband took over. This wasn't just a company changing direction, it was a cultural transplant, one lifestyle overwritten by another. And now, the soul of Harley isn't just missing. It's been replaced with something unrecognizable. So here's the question: can Harley come back? Or is this just what happens when you let a group of boardroom strangers rewrite history they never lived? Was it Jochen Zeitz's fault? Or was it a whole generation of execs who tried to stuff a roaring legacy into a Pinterest mood board? You tell me. Drop your thoughts in the comments and smash that subscribe button.